The laundry room on Deck 7 was always warm. Lieutenant Una liked to do her washing late at night when no one else was around. The hum of the machines helped her think, and the warmth reminded her of home. Earth was far away now, almost 3 years of travel behind her, but some things stayed the same. Clean clothes, warm fabric, the simple comfort of routine. She pulled her basket from the dryer and pressed her face into the pile of shirts and blankets. Still warm. Perfect. She carried it back to her quarters, humming an old song her grandmother used to sing. Her room was small, like all crew quarters on the GSC Horizon. A narrow bed against one wall, a desk with a computer terminal, a tiny bathroom behind a sliding door. But it was hers, and after 3 years in space, she had made it feel like home. Pictures of her family hung above her bed. A small plant sat on her desk, struggling to survive under artificial light. Her favorite blanket, blue with white stars, was folded at the foot of her mattress. Una set the laundry basket on her bed and began to fold. Shirts first, then pants, then socks. She was halfway through the pile when her wristcom buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. The message was marked with a red seal. Priority 1. She had only seen that seal twice in her entire career. Once during a reactor leak on her first ship. Once during a pirate attack near the border zones. Both times, people had died. She opened the message with shaking fingers. Alert. Apex predator nest detected location. Deck 7. Section C classification. Unknown species threat level. Extreme immediate evacuation recommended. Una read the message 3 times. Deck 7. Section C, that was her section. Her hallway. She looked around her small room, suddenly aware of every shadow, every corner. An apex predator? Here. How was that possible? The ship had been in deep space for months. No planets. No stations. No contact with anything alive, except the crew. A soft sound came from the laundry basket. Una turned slowly. The pile of warm clothes moved. Something was underneath, shifting and squirming. She took a step back, her hand reaching for the emergency alarm on the wall. Then a small head popped out of the laundry. It was furry, golden cream colored, with large pointed ears and eyes that caught the light like polished amber. It looked at her and made a tiny squeaking sound. Another head appeared. Then a third. 3 small creatures, no bigger than her 2 hands put together, crawled out from under her thermal blanket and blinked at her sleepily. Una stared at them. They stared back. One of them yawned, showing a mouth full of tiny pointed teeth. Then it curled back into a ball and closed its eyes. Her wristcom buzzed again. This time, it was a direct call from the bridge. She answered without taking her eyes off the creatures. Lieutenant Una, this is Tactical Officer Taiho. Our sensors have detected 3 unknown life forms in your quarters. Bioscans indicate they match the profile of a Class 7 apex predator. Retractable claws, carnivorous dentition, nocturnal hunting adaptations. You need to evacuate immediately. Security teams are on their way. Taiho, Una said slowly. I'm looking at them right now. Get out of there, Lieutenant. Don't make any sudden movements. These creatures could be extremely dangerous. One of the creatures rolled onto its back, showing a soft belly covered in pale fur. Its tiny paws waved in the air. It made a sound, like a small motor running, a gentle vibration that Una could feel through the bed. They're purring, she said. What? They're purring. Like cats, Earth cats. She moved closer to the basket, bending down to get a better look. The creatures watched her with those big golden eyes, but none of them seemed afraid. One of them stretched out a paw and touched her finger. Its claws were tiny, barely visible, and when they pricked her skin, it felt like nothing more than a gentle pinch. Lieutenant, I must insist that you evacuate. These creatures are unknown. They could be carrying diseases. They could attack without warning. Our scanners detected enough muscle density to suggest they could take down prey 5 times their size. Taihao, they're babies. Silence on the other end of the comm. They're clearly juveniles, Yuna continued. Look at them. They're not hunting. They're not attacking. They're sleeping in my laundry because it's warm. They're cold and scared and probably lost. She reached out and carefully touched the head of the nearest creature. It pushed against her hand and purred louder. I think they're orphans. Lieutenant, you cannot possibly know that. I know what a scared baby looks like. Her voice was firm now. I'm not leaving them. The door to her quarters slid open. Security Chief Dohan stood in the hallway with 4 armed guards behind him. They were wearing full tactical gear, weapons raised and pointed at the small basket on her bed. Yuna stepped between them and the creatures. Stand down, she said. Lieutenant, we have orders to contain the threat. There is no threat. Put your weapons away. Dawn hesitated. He was a good man, careful and thorough, but he had never seen Yuna look like this before. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were hard. She stood in front of that laundry basket like she was protecting something precious. Lieutenant, he said carefully, we need to follow protocol. Protocol says we assess the situation before taking action. I've assessed it. Those are babies. They need help, not guns. She pointed at the basket. Look at them. Really look. Dohan leaned past her, keeping his weapon ready. In the basket, 3 small furry creatures were piled on top of each other, fast asleep. One of them was sucking on the corner of a sock. Another had its face buried in a shirt, tiny body rising and falling with each breath. He lowered his weapon. What are they? He asked quietly. I don't know yet, Yuna admitted, but I'm going to find out. And until then, nobody is going to hurt them. She turned back to the basket and carefully lifted out the smallest creature. It fit in her cupped hands, warm and soft and impossibly light. It opened its eyes, looked at her face, and began to purr. It's okay, she whispered. I've got you. You're safe now. On the bridge, Captain Jiwan watched the security feed with a strange expression on his face. Behind him, Communications Officer Yoonji was already searching the database for any species that matched the bioscan results. Sir, she said slowly, I think I found something. What is it? The Velthrani, a feline descended species from the Outer Rim. First contact was made 6 months ago. She paused, reading the file. Sir, they're apex predators. One of the most dangerous species in their sector. And the babies? Their young are considered sacred. The entire species revolves around protecting their children. Yoonji looked up at him with wide eyes. Sir, if those are Velthrani kittens, and if their parents find out we have them. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Captain Jiwan sat back in his chair and watched the feed from Yuna's quarters. The young lieutenant was sitting on her bed now, all 3 creatures curled up against her. She was talking to them softly, words he couldn't hear, while she stroked their fur with gentle hands. Get me everything we have on the Velthrani, he said, and find out how those kittens got on my ship. By morning, the whole ship knew about the creatures in Lieutenant Yuna's quarters. News traveled fast on a vessel with only 200 crew members. By breakfast, everyone was talking about the mysterious apex predators that the sensors had detected. By lunch, half the crew had found excuses to walk past Deck 7, Section C, hoping to catch a glimpse. They were disappointed. Security Chief Dohan had posted guards at both ends of the corridor. Nobody was allowed in or out without permission from the captain himself. Inside her quarters, Yuna was learning things about her unexpected guests. The first thing she learned was that they were hungry. Very hungry. She had spent an hour trying to figure out what they could eat, running scans and cross-checking the results with the ship's food database. In the end, she settled on a protein mixture designed for emergency rations. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to what their digestive systems needed. The creatures ate like they had been starving for days. Maybe they had been. The second thing she learned was that they had personalities. The biggest one, a male with darker fur around his ears, was bold and curious. He climbed everything, knocked things off her desk, and tried to eat her plant. She named him Bori. The middle one, a female with a white patch on her chest, was quieter and more careful. She watched everything with those big golden eyes, always thinking, always observing. Yuna called her Nabi. The smallest one, another male with fur so pale it was almost white, was shy and clingy. He followed Yuna everywhere and cried whenever she put him down. His name became Dubu. The third thing she learned was that they liked to be warm. They piled together when they slept, seeking body heat. When Yuna sat down, they climbed into her lap. When she lay on her bed, they curled up on her chest. They pushed their faces into her neck and purred so loud she could feel it in her bones. Dr. Hana, the ship's xenobiologist, arrived that afternoon with a portable scanner and a lot of questions. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had studied alien life forms on 12 different planets, but she had never seen anything quite like this. She scanned the creatures from every angle while they squirmed and complained in Yuna's arms. The bioreadings are accurate, Hana said finally, studying her results. These are definitely apex predators. Their bone structure suggests they'll be much larger when fully grown. Their claws are retractable and razor-sharp. Their teeth are designed for tearing meat. And their night vision is exceptional. They're babies, Yuna said. She was holding Dobu against her shoulder, patting his back like she had seen mothers do with human infants. He was making small chirping sounds. They won't always be babies. Hana looked at her seriously. Yuna, I understand you want to help them. I do too. But we need to be realistic about what we're dealing with here. These creatures come from a species that evolved to be perfect hunters. When they grow up, they can be very dangerous. Humans evolved to be hunters too, Yuna pointed out. We're apex predators on Earth. That doesn't make us evil. Hana opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She didn't have a good answer for that. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Jiwan entered without waiting for permission, followed by Communications Officer Yunji. The captain was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen too many difficult decisions. He looked at the scene before him, taking in the small creatures. The makeshift bed Yuna had created from spare blankets and the empty food containers scattered around the room. Lieutenant, he said. Report. Yuna stood at attention, still holding Dubu. Sir, the creatures are stable. They've eaten. They're healthy. I've been monitoring their vital signs, and there are no immediate concerns. And what do you plan to do with them? Take care of them, sir, until we can find their parents or their home. Jiwan looked at her for a long moment. Behind him, Yunji shifted nervously. Loved Lieutenant, we've identified these creatures as Volfrani. They are a spacefaring species from the Outer Rim, and they are not friendly. First contact reports describe them as territorial, aggressive, and extremely protective of their young. Then they'll want their babies back, Yuna said. They might also want revenge for what they perceive as kidnapping. The captain's voice was grave. We don't know how these kittens ended up on our ship. We were in open space. No other vessels were detected. It shouldn't be possible. Maybe there was an accident, Yuna suggested. A ship malfunction. An emergency evacuation. Maybe their parents put them somewhere they thought would be safe. Or maybe it's a trap. The room went quiet. Bori chose that moment to climb up Yuna's leg and perch on her shoulder. He looked at the captain with those big golden eyes and meowed. Jiwan's expression flickered. Just for a second, something soft crossed his face. Then it was gone. We're changing course, he said, heading toward the last known Volfrani coordinates. If their parents are looking for them, we need to make contact before they find us. I'd rather explain the situation on our terms than be boarded by an angry warship. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. If this goes wrong, it could start a war. He paused at the door. Keep them alive. Keep them healthy. And whatever you do, don't let them get hurt. After he left, Yoonji lingered behind. She was young, barely 25, with a kind face and nervous hands. I pulled everything I could find on the Velthrani, she said quietly. Their culture is built around family. Children are sacred to them. The entire social structure is organized around protecting the young. That sounds reasonable, Yuna said. It is. But it also means that anyone who threatens their children is considered an enemy of the entire species. Not just one family. Not just one clan. Everyone. Yoonji bit her lip. 3 months ago, a trading station in the Outer Rim had a misunderstanding with a Velthrani ship. Something about inspection protocols and a young Velthrani being handled too roughly by security. What happened? The Velthrani destroyed the station. All of it. 3,000 people. They didn't even negotiate. Just opened fire. Yuna looked down at the kittens. Bori was playing with her hair. Nabi was grooming her own paw. Dabu was falling asleep on her shoulder, his tiny claws hooked into her uniform. Then we better make sure nothing goes wrong, she said. That night, Yuna couldn't sleep. The kittens were curled up on her chest, a warm pile of fur and soft breathing. She stared at the ceiling and thought about what she was doing. She had joined the Galactic Survey Corps to explore, to discover new worlds and meet new species. She had never expected to be responsible for 3 alien babies whose parents might destroy her ship if she made a single mistake. But looking at them now, feeling their warmth, hearing their purrs, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. They were just children, lost and scared and far from home. Someone had to take care of them. Someone had to be kind. That she reached up and stroked Nabi's head. The kitten stirred in her sleep and purred louder. I don't know where you came from, Yuna whispered. And I don't know what's going to happen. But I promise I'll keep you safe. Whatever it takes. Outside her window, the stars rushed past as the ship changed course. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, something was looking for these kittens. Yuna hoped it was their mother. She was terrified it might be something else. 3 days passed. The GSC Horizon pushed through empty space at maximum speed, heading toward the border of Velthrani territory. The kittens grew stronger. They ate more. They played more. They followed Yuna everywhere she went, tumbling over each other and making small noises that sounded almost like laughter. The crew watched the security feeds and placed bets on which kitten would do something cute next. Bori was the favorite. He had discovered how to open cabinet doors and spent most of his time pulling things out and knocking them on the floor. Nabi preferred to climb high and watch from above, her golden eyes tracking everything that moved. Dabu stayed close to Yuna, always touching her, always purring. On the 4th day, the sensors detected a ship. It came out of hyperspace without warning, appearing on the edge of their scanner range like a ghost materializing from nothing. Tactical Officer Taiho's hands shook as he read the data. Captain, it's massive. At least twice our size. Weapons are. I've never seen readings like this. They could tear us apart in seconds. Identification? Captain Jairon's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the armrest of his chair. Velthrani. War-class battleship. Taiho swallowed. Sir, they're powering weapons. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos. Officers shouted orders. Alarms began to sound. Throughout the ship, crew members stopped what they were doing and looked at each other with fear in their eyes. In her quarters, Yuna gathered the kittens and held them close. They sensed her fear and began to whimper. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay. Your family is here. Everything is going to be fine." She hoped she wasn't lying. On the bridge, the main view screen flickered to life. A face appeared, sharp and feline and beautiful in a terrible way. Golden fur covered her features. Her ears lay flat against her skull. Her eyes, the same amber color as the kittens, burned with barely controlled rage. "I am War Mother Suri of the Velthrani Third Fleet," she announced. Her voice was low and rough, like stones grinding together. "You have my children aboard your vessel. You will return them, now." Captain Jiwan stood slowly. He had faced pirates and criminals and natural disasters, but he had never faced anything like this. The hatred in those alien eyes was absolute. One wrong word, and his ship would be dust. "War Mother Suri," he said carefully. "I am Captain Jiwan of the Galactic Survey Corps. Your children are safe. They were found by one of my crew members and have been cared for since their discovery." "Cared for?" The words came out like a growl. "You expect me to believe that humans cared for my children?" "I do, because it's true." Suri's ears twitched. Her claws extended from her fingertips, long and curved and sharp enough to cut through metal. Behind her, on the Velthrani bridge, dozens of other feline faces watched with matching hostility. "Show me." Jiwan nodded to Yunji. She pulled up the security feed from Yuna's quarters and put it on the main screen. The image showed a small room. A narrow bed. A human woman sitting cross-legged on the mattress with 3 kittens piled in her lap. She was reading to them from a datapad, her voice soft and gentle. One of the kittens was chewing on her sleeve. Another was batting at the screen. The third was asleep with his face pressed against her neck. On the Velthrani battleship, someone gasped. Suri's eyes widened. Her ears slowly rose from their flattened position. Her claws began to retract. "She's reading to them," she whispered. "Lieutenant Yuna has been their primary caretaker since we found them," Jiwan explained. "She feeds them. She keeps them warm. She sleeps with them every night so they won't be afraid." "Why would she do this?" Suri demanded. "Humans are not Velthrani. These are not her children. Why would she sacrifice her sleep, her comfort, her safety, for kittens that are not her own?" Jiwan thought about how to answer. In the end, he decided that simple truth was the only option. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We see something small and helpless, and we want to protect it. It doesn't matter if it's one of our own or not. We can't help it. It's how we're built." Silence stretched between the two ships. On the screen, Yuna looked up at something outside the frame and smiled. She said something to the kittens, too quiet for the microphone to catch, and they all started purring. "I want to see them," Suri said finally. Her voice had changed. The anger was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that might have been hope. "I will come aboard your vessel, alone. War Mother, our protocols require, alone." Her eyes met his through the screen. "If you have truly cared for my children, you have nothing to fear from me. If you have lied, no number of guards will save you. Those are your only options." Jiwan looked at his crew, at their frightened faces, at the weapons display showing just how outmatched they were. Then he looked back at Suri. "Docking Bay 3, he said. "I'll meet you myself." The Velthrani shuttle was small and fast. It crossed the distance between the two ships in minutes and landed in the docking bay with barely a sound. The doors opened, and Suri stepped out. She was even more impressive in person. Nearly 7 feet tall, covered in golden fur that rippled like silk when she moved. Her uniform was military, decorated with symbols that might have been medals or rank insignia. Her claws were retracted now, but the sheaths at her fingertips were visible, a constant reminder of the weapons she carried. Captain Jiwon stood waiting with Security Chief Dawn. Both of them were unarmed. They had agreed that weapons would only make things worse. "War, Mother," Jiwon said, bowing his head slightly. "Welcome aboard the Horizon." Suri looked around the docking bay, her nose twitching. "I can smell them," she said. "My children. They are close. They're on deck 7. I can take you there now." They walked through the corridors of the ship. Crew members pressed themselves against the walls as they passed, staring at the massive alien with a mixture of fear and wonder. Suri paid them no attention. Her focus was entirely on the scent trail she was following, pulling her forward like an invisible rope. They reached Yuna's quarters. The door slid open. Yuna was standing in the middle of the room, wearing her off-duty clothes. The kittens were playing around her feet, chasing a toy she had made from rolled-up paper. When the door opened, they all stopped and looked up. Suri froze. The kittens stared at her for one long moment. Then Bori's ears perked up. He made a sound, a high-pitched call that the universal translator couldn't interpret. Nabi and Dabu joined in, their voices rising together. "Mama," the translator finally managed. "Mama, mama, mama." They ran to her, all three of them, tumbling over each other in their hurry. Suri dropped to her knees and gathered them against her chest, making sounds that were half growl, half song. Her whole body was shaking. Yuna watched from across the room. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "They missed you," she said softly. Suri looked up at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the War Mother rose to her full height. Her children still clutched against her and crossed the room in 3 long strides. She stopped directly in front of Yuna. "You," she said. "You are the one who found them." "Yes, War Mother." "You kept them warm. You fed them. You protected them. I did what anyone would do." "No." Suri's voice cracked. "No. You did what very few would do. Humans are prey to most species. Small, weak, easily killed. My children could have hurt you. They could have scratched you, bitten you, drawn blood. But you kept them anyway. They're just babies. They needed help." Suri stared at her with those burning amber eyes. Then she did something that made everyone in the room gasp. She lowered her head and pressed her forehead against Yuna's. "Guardian," she whispered. "Hard sister, the dead of the Velfrani Third Fleet is yours. Now and forever." Yuna didn't know what to say, so she just reached up and placed her hand on Suri's arm, feeling the warmth of her fur, the strength of her muscles, the trembling of a mother who had feared her children were lost forever. "You're welcome," she said. The next few hours were strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Suri stayed aboard the Horizon while her battleship held position nearby. The weapons were powered down now, but nobody forgot they were there. One wrong move and everything could still fall apart. In Yuna's quarters, the War Mother sat on the floor with her kittens piled around her. She held them and groomed them and made soft sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. Sometimes it said love or safe or home. Sometimes it just gave up and stayed silent. Yuna sat on her bed and watched. She felt like she was intruding on something private, but every time she tried to leave, Suri would look up and gesture for her to stay. "Tell me," Suri said finally. "Tell me everything that happened since you found them." So Yuna told her. She started from the beginning, from the moment she had pulled her laundry from the dryer and heard something moving in the basket. She described the alarm, the security teams, the arguments with command. She talked about feeding them, keeping them warm, learning their personalities. She told Suri about Bori's curiosity and Nabi's watchfulness and Dubu's need to be held. Suri listened without interrupting. Her ears moved constantly, tracking Yuna's words. Her tail swished slowly back and forth. When Yuna finished, Suri was quiet for a long time. 3 months ago, she said finally, my ship was attacked. We were traveling through neutral space, returning from a diplomatic mission. A group of raiders caught us by surprise. They were not after cargo or weapons. They wanted the children. Yuna felt her stomach tighten. The kittens? All of them. Every child on the ship. There is a market for Velthrani young in certain parts of the galaxy. Our species is rare. Our children are considered valuable. Suri's voice was flat, but her claws had extended again, digging into the carpet. We fought back. Destroyed most of the raiders. But during the battle, a group of them breached our nursery deck. Oh no, my assistant managed to get most of the children to the escape pods. But there was no time, no coordinates. She launched them randomly, hoping some would survive, hoping we could track them down later. Suri looked at her kittens with eyes full of old pain. 47 children were launched that day. We recovered 44. 3 were still missing when we detected your ship. They've been floating in space for 3 months? The pods are designed for long-term survival. Food production, temperature control, emergency beacons. But the beacons were damaged in the attack. We couldn't track them. We had almost given up hope. Yuna looked at the kittens. At Bori, who was currently trying to climb up Suri's arm. At Nabi, who was watching everything with those careful eyes. At Debu, who was purring against his mother's. Chest out 3 months in a tiny escape pod, alone. Scared. Not. Understanding why their world had suddenly become cold and dark, and empty. How did they end up on our ship? She asked. Your vessel passed close to their pod. Close enough for automatic systems to detect the life forms and attempt docking. The pod attached to your hull during one of your scheduled rest periods. My children found the warmest place they could and went to sleep. Suri's ears twitched. In your laundry. Despite everything, Yuna smiled. They were very comfortable. They were safe. Suri reached out and took Yuna's hand in her own. Her palm was warm, covered in soft fur, and her claws were very carefully retracted. You made them safe. Do you understand what that means? I think so. No, you don't. Suri's grip tightened. Among my people, there is no greater honor than to protect a child that is not your own. It is the foundation of our society, the test by which all beings are judged. We do not care about wealth or power or military strength. We care only about this. When a child needs help, what do you do? Yuna thought about her own culture, about Earth and its history, about all the times humans had failed that test and all the times they had passed it, about the refugees and orphans and lost children who had been taken in by strangers, about the simple, powerful instinct to help something small and vulnerable. What do the Velthrani do, she asked, to people who fail that test? Suri's eyes went dark. We destroy them. And to people who pass, we protect them. Suri released her hand and stood up. She was so tall that her ears nearly brushed the ceiling. Lieutenant Yuna of the human species, you have passed the test. You have been judged and found worthy. From this moment forward, you are under the protection of the Velthrani Third Fleet. Any enemy of yours is an enemy of ours. Any friend of yours is a friend of ours. This bond cannot be broken. That's a lot. Yes, it is. Suri smiled, showing her sharp teeth. I hope you are prepared for the consequences. Captain G1 arrived a few minutes later, escorted by Yunji. He looked tired but relieved. The crisis had passed. War had been avoided. His ship was safe. Well, Mother, he said, bowing his head. I hope everything is satisfactory. More than satisfactory, Captain. Suri turned to face him, her kitten still clinging to her. You have earned the gratitude of the Velthrani. This is not a small thing. We were just doing what was right. Were you? Suri's eyes were sharp. Your tactical officer wanted to kill my children when they were first detected. Your protocols called for evacuation and containment. Your species has no history of cooperation with mine. And yet, here we are. Ji-woon glanced at Yuna, then back at Suri. One of my crew members made a different choice. The rest of us supported that choice. That's all. That's everything. Suri stepped forward until she was standing directly in front of him. Captain, I have lived for 97 standard years. I have seen countless species across dozens of systems. Most of them are selfish. Most of them are cruel. Most of them would have killed my children out of fear or sold them for profit. We're not most species. No, you are not. Suri placed her hand over her heart in what looked like a formal gesture. I will speak to the High Council. I will tell them what you have done here today. And I will recommend that the Velthrani seek formal alliance with humanity. The room went silent. Eug made a small choking sound. Ji-won's face went completely blank, the look of a man who had just been told something impossible. Well, Mother, he said carefully, are you saying? I am saying that you have earned our respect. You have proven that humans can be trusted with our most precious treasure. That is the only qualification that matters. She looked down at her kittens, then back at him. My species has been alone for a long time. We have no allies, no friends. We trust no one. But perhaps it is time to change that. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Suri's smile widened. Say yes and let us begin something new. Ji-won looked at Yuna one more time. The young lieutenant who had refused to abandon 3 lost kittens, who had stood against armed guards and angry officers and the full weight of protocol because she believed it was right. Yes, he said. Let's begin something new. Suri purred. It was a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. Good, she said. Then let us discuss the details. I believe your species has a custom of sharing food during negotiations? We do. Excellent. My children are hungry. She looked at Yuna with warmth in her eyes. And I believe there is someone they wish to introduce me to. The human who kept them warm when they had no one else. Yuna felt her face grow hot. I just did what anyone would do. No, Suri said again. You did what very few would do. And that is exactly why you are special. She held out her hand, and Dabu immediately scrambled from her arms to Yuna's shoulder. He pressed his face against her neck and purred. He has chosen you, Suri said softly. In our culture, when a kitten chooses a guardian, it is for life. What does that mean? It means, Suri said, that you are family now, whether you wanted to be or not. Yuna looked at the small creature on her shoulder, at his pale fur and golden eyes and tiny claws hooked into her uniform, at the trust in his gaze and the warmth of his body against her skin. I wanted to be, she said. I think I wanted to be from the beginning. Dabu purred louder, and Yuna knew that everything had changed. The negotiations lasted 3 days. Captain Ji-won and War Mother Suri spent hours together, talking about trade routes and communication protocols and the basics of a formal alliance. Yoonji took notes until her fingers cramped. Dr. Hana asked questions about Velthrani biology that made Suri laugh out loud, a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Throughout it all, the kittens ran wild on the ship. Mori discovered the engineering deck and had to be rescued twice from the machinery. Nabi found the observation lounge and spent hours watching the stars through the window. Dabu stayed with Yuna, following her everywhere, sleeping in her bed, eating from her hand. The crew fell in love with them. Security Chief Dohan, who had once pointed a weapon at their basket, now carried treats in his pocket. Tactical Officer Tayo, who had called them apex predators, let Boris sleep on his console during the night shift. Even the most hardened officers stopped to pet them when they passed. Your people are strange, Suri told Yuna during one of their conversations. They were sitting in the mess hall, sharing a meal while the kittens played under the table. You know my children are dangerous. You know that someday they will be faster and stronger than you. You know they could hurt you. And yet, you love them anyway. Don't your people love their children? Of course we do. But they are our children. The same blood, the same species, the same family. Suri shook her head. You love anything. Creatures that are nothing like you. Creatures that cannot even speak your language. You look at something small and helpless, and your heart opens without thinking. Yuna thought about that. About the dogs and cats on Earth. About the rescued animals and adopted children and refugees welcomed into homes. About the endless capacity humans seem to have for caring about things that weren't like them. Maybe that's our superpower, she said. Perhaps it is. Suri took a bite of her food, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. On the final day, before Suri returned to her battleship with her children, she asked to speak with Yuna privately. They met in Yuna's quarters, where everything had begun. The room looked different now. The emergency was over. The kittens were safe. Soon they would be gone, back to their own ship, their own people, their own lives. Yuna tried not to think about how empty the space would feel without them. Suri stood by the door with Bori in her arms and Nabi at her feet. She looked at Yuna with an expression that was hard to read. I have a gift for you, she said. War Mother, that's not necessary. It is absolutely necessary. Suri gestured, and someone outside the door stepped forward. Another Velthrani, shorter and younger, carrying something wrapped in cloth. Among my people, when someone saves a life, they earn a debt. When someone saves a child, they earn a bond. You have done both. She took the wrapped bundle and held it out to Yuna. Open it. Yuna pulled back the cloth and gasped. Inside was a kitten. Smaller than the others, with fur as black as space between stars. His eyes were green instead of golden, bright and curious and full of mischief. He looked up at her and meowed, a demanding sound that seemed to say, What took you so long? His name is Gomi, Suri said. He is the son of my youngest sister. He was one of the kittens we recovered after the attack, but his mother was killed in the battle. He has no family now. Suri, I can't. You can. You must. Suri's voice was firm. This is a guardian bond. The highest honor we can give to an outsider. Gomi has been waiting for someone worthy. Someone who will protect him and teach him and love him as their own. But he should be with his people. With other Velthrani, he will be. Suri smiled. You are Velthrani now. At least as much as any human can be. The bond you share with my children has made you part of our family. Gomi knows this. He chose you before I even asked him. Yuna looked down at the black kitten in her arms. He was already purring, already pressing his face against her chest, already making himself at home. He's going to be trouble, isn't he? She said. Absolutely. He's stubborn and wild and he hates to be told what to do. Suri's eyes sparkled. He reminds me of someone else I know. Yuna laughed despite herself. She stroked Gomi's soft ears and felt his small body relax against her. Thank you, she said. I'll take good care of him. I know you will. Suri gathered her own children and prepared to leave. At the door, she turned back one last time. Lieutenant Yuna, she said, the galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are many species who would see humans as prey, who would hurt you and enslave you and take everything you have. But now you have allies. Now you have the Velthrani. And we do not forget those who have shown us kindness. Neither do we, Yuna said. They looked at each other across the small room. Two species that had been strangers a week ago. Two mothers, in different ways, who understood something important about the universe. "Until we meet again," Suri said. "Until we meet again." The door closed. Yuna heard footsteps moving away down the corridor. She stood alone in her quarters, holding a black kitten who had already fallen asleep in her arms. Outside her window, the Velthrani battleship began to pull away from the horizon. Other ships had arrived during the negotiations, an entire fleet that would escort the kittens home. They moved together in perfect formation, a display of power that made the human vessel look like a toy. But they weren't enemies anymore. They were friends, allies, family. Yuna smiled and carried Gomi to her bed. She lay down with him on her chest, feeling his warmth, listening to his purring. He fit perfectly in the curve of her arm. "Welcome home," she whispered. Gomi opened one green eye, looked at her, and promptly fell back asleep. 2 weeks later, Captain G1 filed his official report to Central Command. It was a long document, full of details about the first contact and the negotiations and the new alliance. But the final page contained only a simple recommendation. In the future, he wrote, all threat assessments involving feline species should be reviewed by someone with actual common sense. Our scanners identified apex predators. Our crew member identified scared children. One of these was correct. I will leave it to command to determine which one. Dr. Hana published a paper on interspecies childcare that became required reading at every diplomatic academy in human space. Yunji received a promotion for her role in the negotiations. Taiho requested a transfer, citing stress, but changed his mind when Bori came to visit and fell asleep in his lap. And in the archives of the Velthrani homeworld, a new entry was added to their records of alien species. Species, human classification, unusual threat assessment, low, combat, high, emotional attachment. Special notes, will adopt anything, cannot resist small creatures, provide warm fabric, and they will protect your offspring with their lives. Highly recommended as allies. Handle with caution. They will befriend your children and teach them inappropriate stories about cats wearing boots. Final assessment. Strange, foolish, kind, worth protecting. Lieutenant Yuna never became famous. Her name didn't appear in history books or diplomatic records. She was just a junior officer who had found some kittens in her laundry and refused to let anyone hurt them. But on the Velthrani homeworld, in the Great Hall where heroes were remembered, there was a new statue. It showed a human woman sitting cross-legged, with 3 kittens in her lap and 1 on her shoulder. The inscription reads simply, "She kept them warm." And that, in the end, was all that mattered. Gomi lived to be 47 years old. He grew to be nearly as large as Suri, with thick black fur and eyes that never lost their mischief. He traveled with Yuna across the galaxy, a constant companion, a guardian, a friend. When she finally retired, he stayed with her on a small farm on the outskirts of Earth. They spent their last years together watching sunsets and telling stories to the young Velthrani who came to visit. Yuna would describe the night she found 3 scared kittens in her laundry. Gomi would interrupt with corrections and complaints. The young ones would laugh and purr and ask to hear it again. It was both of them agreed, exactly the life they had wanted. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the alliance between humans and Velthrani continued to grow. Other species joined. Other bonds were formed. But it all started the same way. With a warm basket. With scared children. With a human who chose kindness over fear. That was the real superpower. That was what made humanity special. That was why the galaxy would never be the same.